اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد. زاد عاشوراء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثار والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بكيت وبكي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله لقد عزمت الرزية وجلت وعزمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعزمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت. ولعن الله أمة دفأتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها. ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم. ولعن الله أمة ممحدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشيائهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله على زياد وآل مروان. ولعن الله بني أمية كاتبا. ولعن الله ابن مرجان. ولعن الله عمر بن سعد. ولعن الله شمرا. ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنكبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد أزم مصابي بك. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وللحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتل ونسب لك الحرب وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم. وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناسبين لكم الحرب وبالبراءة من أشيائهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. أسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة. وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله وأن يرزقني طلب ثار مع إمام حدى ظاهر ناتق بالحق منكم، وأسأل الله بحقكم وبه شحن الذي لكم عنده أن يؤتيني بمصابيبكم أفضل ما يؤتي مصابا بمصيبتي، مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الإكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة وأبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم لعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تاب له على ذلك. اللهم لن الإصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايت وبايت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بكيت وبكي الليل والنهار، ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أول ثم الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لن يزيد خامسا ولن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجان وعمر بن سعد وشمرة وعلى أبي سفيان وعلى زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجود. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مسابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا محجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. صلوات.
حديث كساء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري أنه قال عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قال دخل علي برسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة، فقلت عليك السلام. قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا، فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبت من الضعف. فقال يا فاطمة ائتني بالكساء اليماني، فأتيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فأتيته به، وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله، فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل. فقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني والثامرة فؤادي. فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء فقال السلام عليك يا جد يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب هودي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل. فقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا كرة عيني وثامرة فؤادي. فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم أنك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدعنا الحسين نحو الكساء. فقال السلام عليك يا جد. السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله. أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء. فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافعة أمتي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك الأب الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام ويا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم ها هو معه وعلي ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتا يا رسول الله. أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بدعتي قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرف الكساء ومع بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل البيت وخستي وحمتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن صالمهم وعدو لمن آذاهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم. فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. وقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرض مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمس مضية ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل البيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أحبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي أعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرض مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمس مضية ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم. وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لي أبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبي واصطفاني برسالة نجية ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله ثانيا يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني برسالة نجية ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيه محموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم من إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وسئدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسئدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. عباس اے شیر نیستان حیدر، عباس اے شیر نیستان حیدر، عباس دیتی تھی صدا زینب رو کر، عباس کیا اسی دن کے لیے مانگی تھی بابا نے دعا، آ کے پردیس میں ہو جاؤ گے تم ہم سے جدا، سوتے ہو چین سے دریا کے کنارے بھیا، کیا سنائی نہیں دیتی تمہیں حلمن کی صدا، عباس تنہا ہے کرے رن میں سرور، عباس اے میرے شیر جوان، اے میرے بھائی ہو کہاں، شاک ہے دل پہ میری تیری جدائی ہو کہاں، دیر سے دیتی ہوں بھیا میں دہائی ہو کہاں، لوٹتی ہے فاطمہ زہرا کی کمائی ہو کہاں، عباس خنجر ہے ہلکے سرور پر، عباس کیا اسی دن کے لیے سات بہن تھی آئی، آ گئی نیند جو دریا کی طرح پائی، پھر پلٹ کر ہمیں صورت بھی نہیں دکھلائی، آ گیا رہیں سے علم تم نہیں آئے بھائی، عباس پھٹتا ہے میرے صدمے سے جگر، عباس گر کے گورے سے صدا باپ کو اکبر نے جو دی، دل برے فاطمہ زہرا کی عجب حالت تھی، ہاتھ ملتے تھے کبھی گھاٹ کو تکتے تھے کبھی، تھام کر ٹوٹی کمر کہتے تھے فرزند نبی عباس، لاؤ کیسے لاش اکبر عباس، بھائی کو بھول گئے دھیان نہ بہنوں کا رہا، یاد آیا نہ کوئی پائی جو دریا کی ہوا، ہائے کس دل سے کیا تم نے گوارا بھیا، ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے تمہیں یاد کیا عباس، جب چھین گئے کانوں سے گوہر عباس، چھوڑ کر داشت مصیبت میں بہن کو بھائی، تم نے اچھا ہی کیا دور بسائی بستی، دیکھ سکتے تھے کہاں تم جو ہے حالت میری، بلوائے عام میں بھیا میں کھلے سر ہوں کھری عباس، آدھا لے گئے سر سے چادر عباس، ہے شیر نیستان حیدر عباس، دیتی تھی صدا زینب رو کر عباس، پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔ اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجہ۔
زبردست نینوا میرے لشکر حسین، زبردست نینوا میرے لشکر حسین، یہ ذوالفقار حیدری، یہ شیر بے شے نجف، یہ تیغ و تیز ہاشمی، نشان جرت سلام، ہر ایک کمر کز نظر کفیل تشنگان تف، کنار نہر الکما تمام فوج کا ہدف، کسی سے پر نہ رک سکا میرے لشکر حسین، زبردست نینوا میرے لشکر حسین، حسین کا اخی بھی ہے حسین کا غلام بھی، حسین کی سپر بھی ہے تبر بھی ہے حسام بھی، حسین کی زرا بھی ہے کما بھی ہے حسام بھی، حسین حکم دے اگر तो शिमर से कलाम भी वगर न वो कुजा कुजा मीरे लश्करे हुसैन हुसैन इज़्न दे अगर अभी ये सब को देख ले, अभी इराक़ शाम को, अभी हलब को देख ले, अभी अभी ये कूफिया ने बेअदब को देख ले, मुकाबला जो आ पड़े तो कुल अरब को देख ले, मिसाल शाह लाफता मीरे लश्करे हुसैन मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद
With the right loud salawat, please help me to invite Mulana to the member by Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Now go.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh. We're continuing our discussion about justice, or divine justice specifically. We started off a few nights ago trying to figure out, once we establish Allah's power, His authority, His existence, we wanted to go beyond that, because sometimes just recognizing His existence is not enough to increase and strengthen our Iman. So then we asked this theoretical question: is it possible for Allah, for a God, to do dhulm and oppress and be unfair and unjust? So we went and first defined what the term meant by throwing away other terms that are used. After we defined it, then we said, okay, based on this definition, is it possible now, given why a human being would be unjust, could any of these reasons apply to Allah? And as we showed, none of them applied, right? Whether it was somebody being unjust out of ignorance, whether it was out of some need or deficiency they had, whether it was because they were forced by another party or another oppressor, or out of some emotional response, selfishness, something like that. We said none of these reasons, whatever can be conceptualized, Allah is beyond that. Any framework of Allah is beyond that, so it wouldn't apply. But the question that still remains, that inshallah we will, if Allah gives us tawfiq, try to answer tonight and tomorrow night, is, okay, even if theoretically, philosophically, okay, God cannot do anything unjust. There should technically be no evil and oppression in the world, but we still see evil and oppression in the world. So why is it happening? So this question, in order to answer it, now we mentioned, there are other books if you want to go into details, so we can only give just a few points that might help us understand it on a deeper level. We're going to go about it in sort of two different ways. The first way, which we'll probably get to tonight, inshallah, is by going through a few basic reasons on why evil or injustice is actually need for the growth of a human being. why we have to experience it. So that's one. And then for tomorrow night, we're going to be a bit more specific about the question and answer why evil things happen to good people and why do good things happen to bad people. So we're going to just kind of break up the conversation like that. So we'll start with the first part of it. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So remember, we're coming at this from a perspective recognizing sometimes we have our own doubts about Allah, His justice, or His fairness. Or sometimes that doubt comes from the outside, from, let's say, an atheist, for example, where we said that a lot of them, it's not that they don't believe in God, that they don't have enough proof, because there is enough proof. There is clearly a lot of proofs. We only went through one example. There are dozens of proofs out there, right? Much stronger than the ones we actually offered. But if you look at their works, if you look at their life history, by their own admission, the reason many of these individuals might be born and raised on a certain faith, on a certain aqidah or a deen, they end up leaving it not because they cannot prove God's existence, because of this problem of good and evil. Because they cannot figure out why suffering is allowed. And their whole claim is that, well, if God is all powerful and He's all good and merciful and all this, then there should not be any evil in the world. That's their whole contention. That's what they try to claim. So because nobody's been able to solve it for them, or maybe it was solved, but they just kept that egotism and the stubbornness in their heart, then they ended up rejecting religion and God altogether. So we want to make sure we don't fall into that trap, obviously. So the examples that are typically given are things like natural disasters, the crimes that exist in the world, whether small or big crimes, oppression that happens, to many different individuals, genocide, right? Especially for Muslims, we talked about how even Muslims, when we are given a framework to try to see and think about, having faith in Allah and Allah can only do good, still Muslims, when they see extreme oppression, like a genocide, like what's been happening to the Palestinians, it's very tough for Muslims to understand this. And to be honest, I think it's tougher for Muslims outside of that framework of oppression to understand it. Because if you look and see the actual ideology and the words of people for example, in Palestine or Lebanon or Iran, wherever people are being bombarded and attacked and oppressed like that by outside forces, you see that their iman is usually intact and much stronger than someone like you and I, kind of privileged over here in the West. We don't feel that kind of oppression, or the ones that we do is minuscule. It's small. It's nothing compared to what they face. But you see these videos, and you see how they can recite the Quran in the face of these attacks, that they increase their iman because of this, and they actually pray for us to gain more ma'rifah to Allah, even though over here we're like, what can we do for them? And they're thinking about what can we do for people in the West who don't understand the truth of what's happening in a place like this. But yes, these ideas, the oppression that happens throughout the world, it gives us pause. How could Allah allow this to happen? And some of these things get so extreme, some religious people, because the difficulties, the bala, the trials and tribulations that they experience are so extreme, at least for them, it ends up completely pushing away any semblance of religion they had. So a recent sort of historical example is with certain Jewish scholars, rabbis, after the Holocaust, right? Now, many maybe had their own framework for trying to understand it, but there was a certain group of rabbis, one very small, one in particular, that could not understand, and they were trying to conceptualize that, look, we are the chosen people, and this happened to us, and God was just sitting there and watching all this happen. So that rabbi basically said that there's only one of two conclusions from this. Either there is no God, a'udhu billah. They said, because how could a good God that made us a chosen group and tribe and race allow this to happen to us? Or the other conclusion is that there is a God, but He just sat there and watched it and allowed it to happen. And maybe that God, na'udhu billah, is powerless or didn't care for us. And if that's the case, then we have to go and define our own reality and make our own fate now. So this is what happened to certain people who are these rabbinical scholars who had this idea of God's existence and everything, and this is what happened to them. And again, I don't want to say it happens to that religion, it happens to Christians, it can happen to Muslims too. In the Islamic world right now, we do have this movement of ex-Muslims. It happens. I don't want to give names, but there are even famous, some of the famous ex-Muslims that exist within the US. Some of the leaders of this movement are actually Shias. We're ex-Shias, basically, right? If I don't want to say the communities, but I know which communities they come from. I've been to these communities. And there's a whole discussion on, why that came about and how do we prevent that. But it's good for us to keep in mind that these discussions are not simply some abstract philosophical thing that is meant for a book and, who cares? We have to talk about practical things. No, these are things that we're dealing with every single day. It might sound impractical, it might sound abstract, it might sound too philosophical, but behind every person's lack of faith, lack of aqidah, or lack of action, meaning the reason I may not want to practice my furu' ad-din, right? I don't want to pay khums maybe, I don't want to give sadaqah, I don't want to go for hajj, I don't want to pray, I don't want to fast, I don't want to do all these things. Nearly every single doubt or shirking of responsibility of furu' ad-din stems from what? Usul ad-din. If I had certainty in a God's existence and I knew what everything that he did was for my benefit, and that's the only reason he does it, then I'm probably not going to leave those obligations aside. But if I have a doubt in his existence or in that goodness or the benefit of the Sharia and law as a whole, or is Islam really worth it or not? As some of the people asked in the Q&A, which were valid questions, that do I really need this Islam to be a good person? Like, do I really need all this stuff? Right? So it's a common question that people have. So if somebody doesn't have their usul ad-din down packed, then it's going to lead to a lessening of responsibilities, a lessening of action, and God forbid they end up just leaving the deen altogether. So let's start going through some of these explanations. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. I don't know how the weather normally is in Chicago. I mean, I've been here on and off, throughout the years. And I've been unfortunate to have come here probably in December for the past few times, which is probably the worst time to come in Chicago. But wherever you are, I mean, I grew up in New Jersey, so I grew up with pretty bad weather year-round as well, too. So I remember growing up, and I'm sure all the parents here are going to remember this, and all the kids over here will remember being told their parents this, that maybe you decide you get dressed, you want to go outside, and right before you go outside, maybe you have a T-shirt on, right? Or maybe you just got to have a full-sleeve shirt, whatever. You dress your certain way. You're about to step outside, and your parent stops you and says, hold on, you can't go outside like this. It's too cold, but you got to put on a jacket, or you got to put on a hat, you got to put on a scarf, XYZ, you got to layer up, put on 3 pairs of pants, whatever, something like that. So what happens? Almost every single time, the child's like, no, I'll be fine. It's not that bad. I'll be okay. And the parent insists, no, you have to bundle up. You're going to get cold. You're going to get sick. And they go on. And sometimes they lose the battle. Sometimes the child wins the battle. And the parent's like, okay, you'll see. And what happens? The child goes out, and then they pretend like they're not cold, but they're sitting there like this the whole time, like shivering, like, I'm fine. And then they wake up the next day, that disgusting like sniffing sound and everything. And then the mom and dad walks in like, what happened? And I told you so, which don't say that, parents. I told you so is not a nice thing to say, but sometimes it is. Now, if we never got sick, would there ever be a lesson to learn in the first place? If we didn't see the effects of our bad decision making, wouldn't we just keep on making bad decisions for the rest of our lives and doing things which are actually detrimental to us? So the first sort of idea and reason why we perceive or feel unfairness or injustice or punishment, whatever you want to call it, is because it's there to pretty much teach us a lesson and keep us humble. It's very, very easy for us to think that we understand what's going on in the world, that we know better, I know what I can do and all this. And we think we have an understanding of our body, our mind, our spirituality, religiosity, all these things. And then what happens is we would keep that arrogance going unless something came and put us in our place. Again, this is not just for kids, it's for adults as well too. Now, you can put the same example for when a person gets their license for the first time, right? The minute now they're on the road by themselves, they think that they're invincible, so they start driving really fast, weaving in and out of traffic, right? Using their blinkers or not, whatever. And they think that they can just drive like this with their phone and everything, and they'll keep on doing this until what? Either they get a ticket or they get into an accident. Because as long as they're okay and they're safe and they're not caught and there's no damage to them, they'll think that it's fine, it's okay, I'm protected, there's no problem with me. So they keep on repeating the behavior. But once they see some negative repercussions, that's when they learn to humble themselves, hopefully, and say, you know what, maybe I should calm down the way that I drive. So Allah addresses this in different places in the Quran. So we'll give the example of Surah 6, Surah Al-An'am, ayats 42 through 43. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمَمٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِبَأْسَاءِ وَضَرَّاءِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ. And without a doubt, we sent messengers, right, Rasuls, these prophets, to nations before you, right? So he's speaking to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and reminding him that, we've sent prophets before you, obviously, right? 123,999 before. And why we do this? We sent them there, and then the people, we seized them. We gave them problems. We gave them distress. We gave them trials and tribulations and afflictions and all these things. So why? لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ. Whenever you see this word in the Quran, la'alla, that means that there's a chance that maybe somebody might do the following action. So لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ. There's a chance that maybe after somebody goes through these difficulties, maybe they might calm down a little bit and humble themselves. So Allah is defining the idea of trials and tribulations in the Quran very clearly. One of the biggest reasons for it is for us to humble ourselves. No, we don't understand everything. That we are susceptible to evil and violence and all these other things, so that it might be a better idea to turn to Allah to figure out how to prevent this and block this and deal with all these things, rather than me, like a cowboy, or cowgirl, to go out and do whatever I want. Right? So that's one of the reasons. And then in ayah 43, the whole message continues. فَلَوْلَا إِذْ جَاءَهُمْ بَأْسُنَا تَضَرَّعُوا. How come when our punishment came to them, why didn't they humble themselves? So why, when all these difficulties are happening in their life, when this so-called unfairness or unjustness is happening, why aren't they humbling themselves? And then Allah answers, وَلَكِنْ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. It's because their hearts have been hardened. Right? They're stubborn people. وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And Shaitan added this zinat. Shaitan made all their actions seem beautiful. So whether it's the driving example or whatever clothes we wear, anybody's actions, even think about like these sort of evil individuals right now, anything that they're involved in, they can give all these arguments and reasons for why this is a good idea to do this. I mean, we have people obviously making arguments that, genocide and hurting kids and blowing up buildings, residential complexes are a good thing. They're trying to beautify their actions like this. Anybody whose fitrah is even like 1% intact shouldn't say something like that. But you see, these types of individuals are so far gone, they've been so corrupted by their own lower nafs and by shaitan, that even something like just killing innocent civilians, they can beautify that. And that's how shaitan has affected that lowest part of them. So this is the sort of first reason. It's there to sort of humble us. Now let me give you another interesting story related to this, regarding a companion who was with our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. This is probably one of the most interesting stories I've heard in terms of riwayat. Right? Sometimes we have these riwayat which are just like kind of one-liners, be good, or the Imams do something nice and that's it. This one, when you hear it, really kind of shocks you to your core and opens up the way that you view reality. So let me share it. So there was a certain companion of the sixth Imam. He came to visit the sixth Imam, and he said, look, I'm going to go visit one of our other companions, somebody else in the neighborhood. Ya Ibn Rasulullah, do you want to come and join me? Sixth Imam says, yes, okay, I'll join you. So now they go together to this other companion's house. And again, this is a longer hadith. I'm just cutting out some of the details just to get to the point that we want to get to. So they get to this companion's house, salam, alaykum salam, sitting down, all the takalluf, ta'aruf, all that stuff. And they said that, they were now sitting on the floor, and in this person's house, the owner's house, on his shelves, he had, various items, food and things like that. So on his shelves, he actually had some eggs, that were over there. Now, it might seem weird to us because especially in America, we're used to eggs being refrigerated, but that doesn't happen like in many other places in the world. They don't refrigerate eggs. It's a long discussion why. There's no reason for me to talk about that on the mimbar, but not everybody needs to refrigerate eggs. I'm mentioning that because sometimes somebody will hear one part of the hadith, and they'll say, no, it's got to be inauthentic because you have to refrigerate eggs. And they'll say that because, we'll get to the point in a second of why that matters too. But no, I think the majority of the world does not refrigerate eggs. It seems to be only the US, and I don't know about Canada, I can't remember. But who cares about Canada right now? Anyway. USA number one, sorry. Okay. So the Imam's there with that other companion, and they're at this person's house. And then while they're there, for whatever reason, I think if I'm not mistaken in the hadith, the owner of the house, as he's walking, he bumps into the shelf. What happens then is one of the eggs falls off of the shelf. So what's going to happen to this egg? Yeah, it's supposed to break, right? Wasn't a trick question there. It's supposed to break. Okay, here's the trick part. It doesn't break. There's not even a crack on it. So the Imam, out of the corner of his eye, he sees this. And when he sees this, almost immediately, he turns to the owner and says, sorry, we have to get going. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. And he gets his companion and gets out and leaves. And now the companion is shocked. He's like, we came to spend some time with, this other fellow Shia, fellow companion. I've never seen, my Imam act like this before. So we waited till they left the house and they started walking away. And he said, Yabna Rasulullah, I've never seen you behave like this before. What made you just get up and leave like this? Why didn't you stay around, answer how, ask how he's doing and check in on him or take his questions or start a discussion like you would normally do? So the Imam says, because that house is cursed. That family, that person is cursed. He's like, well, how is that? He said, you saw what took place. He said that this person, that egg that fell on the floor, it didn't even crack. He says, what happens is that in a normal person's life, Allah gives them some small or large difficulty, some sort of trial or tribulation or a bala, these small little tests, just to humble themselves. But what happens is after a while, when a person doesn't humble themselves at all, instead their arrogance increases, their ignorance increases. So now all those tests that have been happening over and over and over again now become more and more useless, until such a point where Allah says, there's no point in me giving you any bit of bala whatsoever. So a person thinks they're being protected, right? Because from that person's frame of mind, if I was the owner of that house and my egg fell down and, it hit the floor, it didn't crack, we'd be like, mu'jiza, right? Like, it's a miracle, amazing. Allah loves me. That's part of the delusion that sets up. But the Imam is saying, no, this person is so hard-hearted, so stubborn and arrogant that there's no point in even a small test like that to happen in their house, which means that that house, that person, that family is cursed because of their behavior, because of their akhlaq or bad akhlaq or whatever it happened to be. So this is, something that we need to keep in mind as well too. We should be expecting difficulties happening in our life. We should be to some degree. And when it happens, it's supposed to give us pause and make us think about, okay, well, what could I have possibly have done to lead me up to this point? And we'll talk a bit more about this tomorrow night as well too. A difficulty in our lives by the Quranic standard is meant to humble us, not to enrage us or not for Allah to say, oh, I'm punishing you so you go to hell. No, none of this. It's meant to humble us and give us a better framework on reality. If we're not seeing difficulties happen in our life, then still we should reflect a little bit. If I see my life seems to be going really good, finance, health, family, work, school, whatever, hold on, let me think now. Am I doing all of my duties as a Muslim? There are some people who, again, they live their life with almost zero Islamic practice. Maybe they say they are, but there's no real practice. They don't really try to become better, nothing. If things are going great for me and I'm not really trying to be better, that's probably a huge warning sign and a red flag. That, maybe Allah's saying that I'm so arrogant that He doesn't want to try me with anything. I really need to reshape and reorient my life. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. What are we commemorating these 10 nights? This tragedy of Karbala has so many different dimensions. One of them was to wake up the Muslim Ummah. That they were hard-hearted, they were arrogant, they were ignorant. To allow somebody like Yazid la'natullah alayh to become their Khalifa and leader and not do anything about it. So some great sacrifice has to take place in order for the Muslim Ummah to wake up, for them to humble themselves. Now, what did they do afterwards is a different discussion, but it was a sacrifice made in order for the Ummah to wake up. Sometimes we maybe misunderstand what the purpose of Karbala is and the tragedy and even our majalis. Now, I think this happens in many of our communities. Hopefully it doesn't happen here, but one of our teachers, I think, phrased it really beautifully. He said, sometimes people, they come to the majalis, they come to these gatherings in order to feel good or to feel great, right? They expect to come to hear a certain type of speech, to feel like it's almost entertainment, and feel good about themselves, have their identity strengthened in the fact that I feel like I'm on haqq and I'm right and everybody else is wrong. And then they might cry a little bit and they feel good about that too. They get some food and they leave. And they feel good after the program. Or in fact, they feel great after it. So our teacher had said that Karbala didn't take place and didn't happen to make us feel great. It happened to make us become great. There's a huge difference. That it's supposed to be transformative. It's supposed to make me think when I'm hearing the stories on two different sides. I'm hearing partially the stories of the companions of the Bani Hashim, of how they give their lives. Wow, these are great qualities. I want to mimic them and mirror them and live these. That's one part. The other side, which is maybe tougher, and maybe we don't want to do this, is that when I hear stories of Shimr, of Umar ibn Sa'ad, of Ibn Ziyad, of Hurmara, of all these evil individuals, besides me doing la'na and all that, which is fine, well, I need to figure out, do I have their qualities too? Am I living my life like them? Like, I can't just put up the Ahlul Bayt and the companions on a pedestal while at the same time having the qualities of the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt. So hearing these stories, that's one of the reasons. It's a reminder of what evil qualities exist in individuals, and that I might have that as well. I need to make sure I purge that from my soul, hopefully within these 10 nights, and I carry that on and increase myself and improve myself as the years go by. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So that's one of the reasons why we experience or have to feel this sort of evil or injustice or unfairness in the world. Then the second point, which was tied to the idea of where we gave that random egg example, that I've had it many times where we'll share a hadith, right? And there'll be that one person in the crowd who's, arms folded, judging, they're, very critical about everything they hear. So they hear a certain hadith, they hear a certain part of the hadith. They don't want to take the message from it. They're just nitpicking, right? Being very pedantic and particular about that. And I guarantee if I didn't make the point, somebody probably would have come up afterwards too and said, no, I don't think that's authentic because eggs need to be refrigerated. It couldn't have been sitting on a shelf. Right? They would have said something like that. That's why I had to make that point. So what is the other reason, or one of the other reasons why we think that we are feeling something unjust or unfair, we're experiencing evil or dhulm? It's because of that sense of arrogance, that we feel like we have the whole picture, that we know everything, we have all detailed information available to us, and that's it. So because I have all the information available, I can make a proper judgment about the situation. That I know what is best in this situation right now. Another example. How many of you enjoy the rain? Okay, not too many. Right? I can't stand it. I don't know why I'm in Florida, but I can't stand the rain. Now, if those of us who, like me, you don't like the rain, let's say, like certain groups are accused of, let's say we had control of the weather, we probably would stop it from raining. Now, if we had control of everything and we stopped it from raining, then what would happen there? Obviously, it's going to have a huge effect on farms and crops and growth and things like that. Right? Sometimes our ego and our limited view on things, we would want to adjust something a certain way because we have this tunnel vision about life and about reality. So I'm going to make, whatever, get rid of rain. It's a small example, but I think hopefully you'll understand. And then, of course, that causes all this pain and suffering down the line that now, hey, how come there's no fruit and vegetables at the supermarket anymore? And we'll blame it on somebody else, right? Because of our limited scope of knowledge. As Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. We've only given you just a small little glimpse of knowledge. Why do you think that you have this full macro picture of all of reality? We don't have much. And this is the same thing that we always accuse other people of doing too, of being short-sighted or having this tunnel vision. So I'm sure many of you have seen our, I was going to say your buddy or our buddy, kind of jokingly, but Elon Musk, right? I just saw it today, tweeted a video of a julus, right? Of people outside doing matam, without any sort of comment whatsoever, but basically trying to say that, oh, look at these backwards Muslims and how they're taking over, right? That's because, unfortunately, that's his ideology, like many others right now. What do? They take our acts of love, of commemoration, of mourning out of context. They just blast these things online and say, look at these violent individuals just, hitting themselves, blah, blah, blah. This is what people say. And of course, we would come and say, look, no, we're not there. Whatever you think that this is, you don't have the full picture. You don't understand where this came from, how this developed. You're taking it out of context. This whole history exists about how these lamentation gatherings started and where these processions come from. And beyond that, these processions, they've even happened in other religions too. You can find in the Bible verses about hitting your chest out of grief. So people who are short-sighted, small-minded, they see one little clip and they take it out of context. They say, oh, look at these backwards Muslims. And again, Wahhabis will do the same thing to us too. Look at these backwards Shias doing this stuff. Well, no, take the full context in mind. And the same thing would happen even to, let's say, an average Muslim, like even a Wahhabi, where if, let's say, another person, and I've seen these comments happen, if people are shown the picture of where somebody's praying at Masjid al-Haram in front of the Kaaba, they're all around, right, in that circle, and let's say it's a picture of them doing sujood. And what happens? For some people, they say, look, you guys are praying to a black box. That's what you guys are doing. You're worshiping a black box. So non-Muslims might say something like that, like, no, that's not what we're doing. Let us actually explain for you the context. Right? And it's funny because a Wahhabi would defend that point and say, no, we're not worshiping the Kaaba. But at the same time, if somebody does sujood in a certain way, other ways, and they say, oh, you guys are worshiping it, right? So this is what happens when somebody's very short-sighted and they make double standards and things like that. So remember we talked about this definition of justice that came from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. That justice is what? يَدْعُ الْأُمُورِ مُوَادِعَهَا. Justice is to put everything in its rightful place. When we want to be just to somebody else, we don't understand their life experiences. We don't know what they've been through. We don't know if what they're going through is actually, in the totality of their life, actually good or bad for them. We have no idea. Or, for my own self, if this thing that I'm experiencing, how do I know without a doubt that this is actually bad for me or not? Or in the long run, is this actually good for me? I don't have all these variables, all this knowledge. It might seem so in the moment that this small little action seems bad. And again, some of these details will continue on tomorrow night. But if I just had a better bird's eye view, a macro view of things, then I'd say, oh, wow, this actually was really beneficial. Sometimes this happens to us where those of us who, let's say, are a bit older, maybe a certain experience that we had when we were younger, grade school, college, we had a teacher that we didn't get along with or a weird professor. Maybe we don't respect them or understand why they did that in that moment. And then as we get older, say, wow, actually, that was a really beneficial experience for me. So we have to recognize that being just in all these situations means don't be short-sighted. So we might think something is unfair, unjust, dhulm, oppression, but that's because we don't have the totality of space-time to understand where something really lies and whether it's actually beneficial or harmful. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That's the second point. The third point. Justice isn't the highest level of expression that we have. Justice sounds really good, especially when we talk about social justice, but we as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam, we are given a level higher than that. And the only way to understand that higher level is to actually be shown justice a little bit as well too, and then be shown what's higher than that. So let me give an example. Many of you may have heard this story before, I'm not sure. Some attribute it to Nabi Nuh alayhi salam. Some say this is just a story about a famous wise individual in the past, but I'm going to recite it from the perspective of Nabi Nuh because that's the way that I had come across this. So they say, this is it, but we're in the story of Nabi Nuh alayhi salam. He's been preaching for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, right? 900 years, 950 years as we see, and the people are just not accepting it, or he only has a small group. So they said at this point, after he's been rejected over and over and over again, and nobody would fault him, right? After whatever, 900, 950, 1,000 years, he's been preaching. So eventually you're going to get tired and say, you know what, I don't think they're going to listen. So in this version of the hadith, they say that it's at this point that in Nabi Nuh, he goes to Allah, makes his dua and says, Allah, I've been preaching your message for, all these centuries. Without hesitating, without, weaning and weakening whatsoever. He said, but I think, time's up for them. Like, I think that's it. They've had their chances, and it's only a small group that's, listened to the message. So I think at this point now, the only answer for this group is to, like you've done with previous groups, wipe them out, right? Because they're not following the message. So this was the dua that, was made. Now, do any of you know what was one of the jobs that Nabi Nuh had in his lifetime? One of his skills? So they say that he was, in pottery, right? That he would design and make things like cups, pots, glasses, bowls, things like that. So they say while he was doing this, obviously anybody who's giving their full being and wujud to the sake of Allah, they don't just do it for religious stuff, they do it in everything. So even when he's, doing his work, earning a living, putting these pots and vases and whatever together, he's doing it with, all of his energy involved, right? For the sake of Allah, for the sake of halal rizq and sustenance. But I think he's still a human at the end of the day, just like any of us. There's some pieces of work that you and I do, something that we do that maybe has a bit more of our love and attention than other things. So they said that there was a certain type of bowl or a cup or something that Nabi Nuh alayhi salam had made that he felt like this was like his crowning achievement. Like this is his masterpiece. Like this is all of his energy and love got put into this. So anyway, one day, somebody came to the shop, was looking around, and found that his most beautiful piece and was ready to purchase it. So the person asked the amount, Nabi Nuh gave him the amount, they exchanged the money, so the person takes that bowl and then smashes it right in front of Nabi Nuh. Nabi Nuh is shocked, like, why did you do that? It's like, well, I know you purchased it, I know that now it was yours now, but I spent so much time, so much energy, in making it beautified and all of this. This was literally, I've never been connected to something so much in my life, and you just smashed it like it was nothing. Like, why would you do something like that? Then the individual revealed himself to be one of the angels. According to the narration, some say Jibreel. There's other narrations too. It doesn't really matter which angel. He said that, no, I was sent here by Allah to give a message. That, see how connected you were just to this simple bowl, and how much it broke your heart just to have this smashed in front of you. He said, what do you think is Allah's greatest creation and His most beloved creation? It's insan, it's human beings. He said, and you are asking Allah to just smash it like that as well too. Allah does not like to have this sense of punishment and dealing out vengeance and some of these things that we hear. Allah is just wiping people out, wiping civilizations out, that maybe other religions, they talk about this a lot. Well, this is not the Allah that you and I are supposed to understand. So Allah was trying to show Nabi Nuh that no, maybe that might have been the most just thing to do, but for Allah, He's Arhamur Rahimin. That mercy, love, and compassion is higher than any of these things. In the Quran, Allah says, Sabaqat rahmatuhu ghadabahu. That Allah's mercy, that all-encompassing universal mercy, always precedes His wrath, His ghadab, His anger. Now, sometimes the way we hear it from lectures, or maybe the way our parents told us, or we see sometimes explained, it seems like Allah is just angry all the time, but that's not how Allah has introduced Himself. 113 out of 114 surahs are starting which way? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah is saying, I'm introducing myself this way to you every single time, that whenever you start anything, you take my name, and don't just take any of these other Asma al-Husna, take these two specifically, Ar-Rahman, which is this universal, all-inclusive mercy that goes to everybody, even my enemies. People who don't believe in me, they get my mercy as well too. They get life, they get sustenance, they'll continue on, I'll keep them going. But yes, Ar-Rahim is a bit different. Ar-Rahim is that very exclusive, particular mercy that Allah gives special care and attention to those who are trying to get back towards Him. Allah says, I want you to start off anything that you do in life, especially the Quran, but anything we start off with, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. To remind us that no, don't start with anger, don't start with even justice, start with this universal love and compassion. At the same time, also keep in mind this particular specialized mercy that exists for those who have this love for Allah as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Again, reminding ourselves of Karbala. People now, we have a lot of slogans that we discuss when it comes to Karbala, that Karbala was about justice, right? Karbala was about freedom, it was about liberty, it was about human rights. I know a lot of these flags are raised nowadays. I'm a bit cautious about things like that, about trying to attach modern day terminology and putting it on a parcham, on a flag, and saying Imam Hussein stood for this. If the Imam didn't say it himself, I think we should be very cautious about that. Because it's very easy for somebody to take any of these modern day movements, to put it on a flag and say Imam Hussein stood for this without actually having real proof behind that. There are all these groups now that think Imam Hussein stood for their rights. Right? In a sort of recent thing, without naming the group by name, because just in case I don't want to make children aware of some of these groups that are out there, but I'll just call them the alphabet group, the Rainbow Rangers, if you know what I'm talking about. Right? There's many of their groups out there who say that, yes, Imam Hussein stood for our rights. I don't know where you would get that from, but they think that they do. Like Imam Hussein stood for our rights. And they'll have specific majalis just dedicated to them. That, yes, we can be proud of our identity because Imam Hussein stood for our pride. Which should, for any Muslim, even somebody who wants to show love and compassion to that group, which is fine, but okay, Imam's not going to stand for your rights necessarily. That seems a bit ridiculous. There are some people who grab on other modern day social movements. Even if those movements might be a good movement, they'll still try to grab the slogan and throw it there, right? If Imam was here, he would be marching in the streets with Black Lives Matter. Like, okay, you can't just make these claims out of nowhere. Any movement that you might be interested in is fine, but don't drag the Imam into it without really having strong evidence for that case. Because then we're just going to go on doing this all the time and grabbing every single movement. Like, you just wait a few years, not even a few years, it could even happen like by this year, where now AI becomes conscious, right? It becomes sentient, and then AI robots start arguing for their rights. I guarantee robots are going to be in the street say Imam Hussein stood for AI rights, right? So this is what's going to happen like very soon. So we have to be careful of just grabbing anything that we believe in and force feeding it back into Islam, back into the Quran, and especially back into Imam Hussein. There's a very specific reason he stood up, and hopefully we know that if we don't, again, read the books, you'll see very clearly why the Imam stood up and rose up and did everything that he did. He said it in his own words. He gave khutbahs multiple times. To see his words for yourself, and you'll see exactly what he wanted to stand for. Now, the reason I mention this is because if we're going to use any single word to capture and encapsulate his movement, it wouldn't even be something like justice. The only word which, humbly, I would say captures the Imam's movement is rahmah and mercy at every step of the way. According to some, they say that on that night of Ashura, when everybody was involved in different types of ibadat and different things, there are some who say that late at night, once everybody was kind of focused on something else, the Imam snuck out of the tents and was going towards the middle of the battlefield. Again, there was no fights happening yet. This is the night of Ashura. And a companion noticed this, and he was scared. He thought, what's my Imam doing? Let me follow him secretly to see what's going on. So he was trying to trail him from a distance to make sure the Imam didn't know that he was being followed. But he wanted to protect his Imam just in case something happened. So he tried to figure out what's going on with the Imam, and then he sees the Imam stopped. And when the Imam stopped, he started hearing the Imam crying, profusely crying. And then this companion was shook. Why is the Imam crying like this? And the Imam, of course, knew that he was being followed, so he told the companion, no, come, it's okay, come here and let me explain what's happening. He said, I know that you're confused about why you see me shedding tears like this in the middle of the battlefield. He said, go ahead, ask your question. He said, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, he said, I know that, you cannot, it's not that you're afraid of death. He's like, I know that that's impossible. I know that you're not afraid of facing these enemies because you're the son of Haydar. How could you, be afraid of facing enemy soldiers? He said, I know that you're not afraid for us either because we've been trained by you, we'll follow you. Like, what else could there be? Why would you cry like this on the battlefield? He said, the reason why according to this story and report, he said, the reason I'm crying is it's because I'm looking out at the enemy camps. I'm seeing all of these individuals. And I said that, he says, I know that they're going to hell. And I know that I'm the cause of this because I'm here, they've brought me here. I am the cause of them going to hellfire. He said, and that breaks my heart. I don't want anybody to end up in this situation. I don't want to be the cause of them going toward Jahannam. Can you imagine somebody having this framework that people are on the other side, depriving them of water with swords and arrows faced at them, and the Imam is worried about their akhirah. That I wish there was something that I could do to bring them back towards the right path. Every step along the way, what is the Imam trying to do? Trying to awaken their conscience. Why do you think he sends out Ayul Akbar in the beginning at Fajr time to recite the Adhan? Just because he has a nice voice or whatever? No. What do we all hear? That he's the Shabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. And he wanted to remind these enemies of their connection to Rasulullah. And he's thinking, maybe if they hear a voice that's similar to Rasulullah, maybe they'll come to their senses. Every move the Imam is making, every choice that he makes, it's not some military tactical decision. This is a decision to try to get somebody back on the right path. It's rahmah, it's mercy that's driving him at every step of the way. Why? Because he's the grandson of Rahmatul lil Alameen. What else can they do? At every step, he says, look, let me go and talk to Yazid. If you don't want to fight me, let me go talk to Yazid. This is what he says to Umar ibn Sa'd. Let me go talk to Yazid. Let me go away here. That way you don't have to kill me, because Umar ibn Sa'd didn't actually want to do it. He said, I know that this is going to send me to hell. I don't want to do this, but in a sense, he's like, I'm after power. What can I do now? So even Imam Hussein was trying to give him a way out, but of course he rejected that. At every step, even with shimr on his chest, he said, if you let me go here, then this will be better for your akhirah. But of course, these people were so evil, so vile and disgusting that they rejected the Imam at every single corner. Of course, this opened the path for what people like Hur and people who are with Hur and certain individuals on the enemy camp who were awakened and who did run away or decide to change their destiny based on that. This is how the Imam operates. So this final point that we were making is that we see justice not because that is the ideal that we need to live by, but because there is something above that. So if we didn't see that certain people are deprived in the world, that certain people are oppressed, or they're deficient, or something is taken from them, that would not, then we wouldn't be able to activate that sense of love, mercy, and compassion for them. So that injustice sometimes takes place so that you and I can step in and stop that from happening, and to show them that compassion and mercy. That's literally the definition of rahmah, of when you see a gap or a deficiency in someone, you come and fill that for them. That's what we're supposed to be doing, and this is what we're reminded on these nights of Ashura. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The final point that we will mention tomorrow night is we'll show how justice, or injustice rather, in this world actually has a larger benefit, and why is it the case that good people will end up going through what they think is injustice, and why does it seem that evil people have good things happen to them? Right? So this is what we'll talk about, and that will technically end our series tomorrow night, inshallah. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And it's of course fitting that when we are mentioning this concept of rahmah and mercy, that who better to discuss and to honor than Abu Fadl al-Abbas. You know, sometimes, especially us men, right, when we think about him, we think about this protector, this warrior, this soldier, right? We talk about his size and how his feet were touching the floor when he was on his horse, and how he's able to go out, how he was this incredible warrior and everything. And that's fine. But the part of Abbas that we really should be focusing on was that softness in his heart. Of what really was he doing this whole time? His connection to his brother, to his imam. How easily Abbas could have gone out to the battlefield and acted a certain way and fought in a certain way. But everything he did, he knew that I don't create my own strategy. I don't let my ego define my actions. My Mawla Hussein, my brother Hussein, will tell me what to do, and that's it. I'm an instrument under him. That's it. If my Mawla tells me I cannot go out and fight, I'm not going to go out and fight. If he tells me that the only thing I can do is go out and get water, then that's all I'll do. So Abbas, his strength doesn't just lie in his physical stature or his ability to wield the sword or anything. No, it exists in that softness in his heart and his ability to completely annihilate and destroy his ego. Everything was viewed through the eyes of Hussein. That's how he functioned. That's why we honor Abbas like this. And his heart, of course, the reason it was so soft and broken on this afternoon of Ashura is because of those cries that he hears over and over again from the children. Al-Atash, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. Seeing the companions go one by one, of course that broke his heart. Seeing now his cousins, his nephews, his brothers own sacrificing their lives, of course broke his heart. But when he hears the cries of the children, especially when he hears the cries of Sakina over and over again, Al-Atash, Al-Atash, when he hears, is there any water for us yet? Did anybody successfully go to the river and bring us water yet? Abbas can't take this anymore. Over and over again, he's coming to Hussein, asking his brother, his Mawla, for permission, and he's being rejected every time. Abbas, how can I send you outside? You are the alamdar, you're the one who is the flag bearer. If you go out and you lose your life, then these children's hearts, their morale, their hopes and dreams will die along with you. These women see you as their protector. If you're gone, then what hope do they have left? So how can I let you go out? Over and over again, Abbas is asking, until according to some, as either the poets or the historians report, they say now Abbas comes and asks for the last time and says, Mawla, Hussein, Akhi, let me go out and fight, please. Let me go out and get water, please. And then he says, please, I told you, how can I let you go out? You are the alamdar, you're the commander, you're the flag bearer. I can't let you go out. And then Abbas, he says, oh brother, look around. Who else is left on this battlefield? You and I are the only ones left. I am an Amir, I'm a commander, and I have no army in front of me. So at least let me go out and get some water. Let me try to end the cries of these children, please. Hussein gives him permission. And according to some riwayat, Hussein and Abbas actually went out together to try to get this water. And in the middle of this, they say that when this happened, the enemies cut off Hussein from Abbas, and this is where the story unfolds. And Abbas, they say, is carrying his flag in one hand. He has this water skin around him in the other hand. And the way that the poets sometimes describe it is that they say perhaps Sakina was sitting there outside the tent. Normally, it was mothers that would go outside. And maybe perhaps here Sakina is looking outside, seeing in the distance the flag of her Ammu Abbas out there, waiting for that flag. First, she sees it getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Then she sees it go down She's thinking that now maybe my Ammu Abbas, my Chacha Abbas, he's reached the river Furat, and he's telling the other children, she's telling everybody else, Abbas has gotten water for us now. And as we know, when Abbas had reached Furat after ending the lives and sending all these soldiers to Jahannam, he's there at the river Furat. He's there with this water in his hands. And when he sees this, all he can think about is the thirst of Hussein. And he throws this water down as if it's the worst thing in his hands. He fills up this water skin and begins to make his way back. And the enemies knew they could not let this water reach the camp of Hussein. They could not face him one-on-one. Even when they tried to gang up on Abbas, Abbas would plow through these individuals. So some of them then had to use unsavory tactics. They would start to hide in certain areas. They started to hide behind trees. When Abbas passed one of these trees, a soldier came out and now cut one arm of Abbas. Another soldier comes out when they see Abbas struggling. Now they cut the other arm of Abbas. The archers now see that this is their opportunity and begin firing arrow after arrow at Abbas. They say some are now hitting his chest. Some are hitting his eyes. But mu'mineen, mu'minat, azadaran, we know that none of these matter to Abbas. But one of these arrows, this is the one that broke Abbas's heart. When he sees this arrow hitting that water skin and now sees that everything that he had gone out for now is gone and pouring out in front of him. This is where they say now he has to think about it. Do I stop over here? Do I continue back? Do I go back to Sakina like this? Or do I turn back and try my best, even without arms, to go back to the river and get something? We don't know exactly what happened over there, but somewhere along the way now, Abbas is crying out, Ya Akha, Ya Akha. He's off of his horse. He's calling for his brother Hussein. Hussein runs now and makes his way towards Abbas. There are different reports about the final moments of what happens over here. And some ask, and some say that the reason we know that Abbas actually made his way back to Furat is because as Hussein was making his way towards Abbas, he found one limb after one limb before he made his way to the body of Abbas, which means that even after Abbas was struck, he turned back and headed back towards Furat, probably because in his mind he said, I cannot go back empty-handed. When Hussein now finally reaches the body of Abbas and he's laying there, he takes the head of Abbas and puts it in his lap, and they begin having their final conversation. And he begins reciting to his wasiyah all these things that he wants. They say that one of his requests, he says, Oh Hussein, oh Akhi, oh my Mawla, the biggest request that I have from you, I know that it's been very difficult for you, that if together you and I have been bringing back the companions' bodies one by one and laying them at the camp. I know that we've had to bring back the body of your son Ali al-Akbar. We had to bring back the body of Qasim. We've had to bring back the bodies of An and Muhammad together. I'm telling you, leave my body over here where it is. Leave my body right here. And what some say, when Hussein says, why do you want to be left over here? They say perhaps he responded to him, I'm ashamed to go back there to Sakina without letting her know that I was unable to quench her thirst. I do not want to go back to her empty-handed. And this is where Hussein says his final salams and his final wida to Abbas. He gets up and says these final words as he walks back to the camp, bending down, saying, Al-an inkasarat dhahri. Now my back is broken. I have no support left in this place and no support left in this world. Some poets and historians say now Hussein is there. Sakina is waiting outside the camps, saying, where's my Ammu Abbas? Was he successful or not? I don't see his flag anymore. Where is he? And there's nothing Hussein can say to her. He says, your Ammu Abbas is not returning. And perhaps Sakina replies that, Baba, what if I don't ask for water anymore? Then will my Abbas come back? على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره يا حسين
Ya Hussein, 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 come closer, come closer, come closer, come closer. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Where has my Abbas gone? 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 Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
Oh Abbas, you were my uncle. Oh Abbas, you were my brother. Oh Abbas, you were my son. Like you there was no other. You went to search for water. You searched so far and wide. You went for your brother's daughter, and you searched for her, you died. Where has my Abbas gone? 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 Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
You hear the thirsty children, you hear them and you heard. Their hopes are slowly dimming, so you ride out through Farad. Your brother was your master, before him you never drink. To Farad you rode much faster, for Ruqayya you only think. Where has my Abbas gone? 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 You hear the thirsty children, you hear them and you heard. Their hopes are slowly dimming, so you ride out to Farad. Your brother was your master, before him you never drink. To Farad you rode much faster, for Ruqayya you only think. Where has my Abbas gone? 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 Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
The thirst and how it pains them, you hear them in your mind. Alatash, Uncle Abbas, why were they so unkind? Your mushk is full of water, you turn to the camp of Zayn. You're bringing this for his daughter, but you never see her again. Where has my Abbas gone? 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 Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
The thirst, how it pains them, you hear him in your mind. Alatash, Uncle Abbas, why were they so unkind? Your mushk is full of water, you turn to the camp of Zayn. You're bringing this for his daughter, but you never see her again. Where has my Abbas gone? 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 Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
Oh Yazid, may Allah curse you. You denied Hussein some water. You killed his 6-month son and you tortured his little daughter. Shackled and tormented her. Look at her and gone. She asked her headless father, where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone?
May Allah curse you, you denied Hussein some water. You killed his 6-month son and you tortured his little daughter. Shackled and tormented her, look at her, rings have now gone. She asked her headless father, where has my Abbas gone?
Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Abbas gone? Where has my Ya Hussein? Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein.
सुन लो अपनी बेटी के आखिरी बयां बाबा, सुन लो अपनी बेटी के आखिरी बयां बाबा, सुन लो अपनी बेटी के आखिरी बयां बाबा, बंद होने वाली है अब मेरी ज़ुबान बाबा, सुन लो अपनी बेटी के आखिरी बयां बाबा, सुन लो अपनी बेटी के قید کے اندھیروں میں گھٹ رہا ہے دم میرا، قید کے اندھیروں میں، قید کے اندھیروں میں گھٹ رہا ہے دم میرا، اب سہی نہیں جاتی مجھ سے سختیاں بابا، سن لو اپنی بیٹی کے آخری بیاں بابا، سن لو اپنی بیٹی کے آخری بیاں بابا، جب میرا جواں بھیا ایریا رگڑتا تھا، جب میرا جواں بھیا ایریا رگڑتا تھا، جب میرا جواں بھیا ایریا رگڑتا تھا، چبھ رہی تھی میرے بھی دل میں برچیاں بابا، سن لو اپنی بیٹی کے آخری بیاں بابا، سن لو اپنی بیٹی کے آخری بیاں بابا، جسم کانپ اٹھتا ہے روح تر تراتی ہے، جسم کانپ اٹھتا ہے روح تر تراتی ہے، جسم کانپ اٹھتا ہے، جسم کانپ اٹھتا ہے روح تر تراتی ہے، شمر ہم کو دیتا ہے ایسی غرقیاں بابا، بیٹی کے آخری بیاں بابا، سن لو اپنی بیٹی کے آخری بیاں بابا، جب گلے لگایا تھا تم نے ہم کو مقتل میں، جب گلے لگایا تھا تم نے ہم کو مقتل میں، جب گلے لگایا تھا تم نے ہم کو مقتل میں، آج تک رلاتا ہے وہ سما بابا، سن لو اپنی بیٹی کے آخری بیاں بابا، سن لو اپنی بیٹی کے آخری بیاں بابا، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات صلی علی محمد و آل
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا سيد الشهداء بكربلاء يا أبا عبد الله، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، السلام عليكم يا أئمة المعصومين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي، السلام عليك يا حجة القائم بن حسن المهدي مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان، عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره، وجعلنا من خير أعوانه وأنصاره وشياعه والمستشهدين بين يديه، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على There will be a Q&A, so please get the word and sign us sit down and get started.
The last one's going to be tonight or tomorrow
No,
night?
you didn't say this. Well, if you want, whatever you feel.
Tomorrow night as well, so I can do the